heard in your great hymnal, to number 123. Please stand and join me.
Our friend, Ghanim Khalil, needs no introduction, but for those of you who may not have heard him speak, Ghanim is a British-born Muslim of Pakistani descent, a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and New York Army National Guard, a peace activist, a lover of the natural world, and a student of world history and religion. He spoke out publicly against the war in Iraq as a soldier in the massive anti-war rally in New York City on February 15th, 2003. Ghanim has been speaking out against Islamophobia and war since 9/11. He speaks in various colleges and universities, churches, and other spaces provided by peace and interfaith groups. He is a resident of Staten Island, New York, and he has spoken here many times to our congregation. So we welcome you, Ghanim.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay. Raditu billahi rabban wa bi islami dinan wa bi Muhammadan sallallahu alaihi wasallam nabiyya. First, I'd like to thank Ruth and everybody who put this together for inviting me to talk about this very important topic. And everybody who comes and attends these topics really do help out in the long run. For this particular topic, I'm not really happy about. As a historian, as a human being, and neither should you, but I promise you, towards the end, I'm going to give you some hope. All right, and you take that hope back with you, just keep it in your heart. I'll begin with the Quran. The topic is the new imperialism, from Greenland to Gaza. But I'll start with a couple of quotes from the Quran, the Holy Quran. The first one is, among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth and the diversity of your languages and colors. Indeed, in that are signs for those who have knowledge. And the second one is, O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you. Indeed, God is all-knowing, acquainted. These two verses are often used by Muslims and international studies, those scholars that study the relationship between nation states and groups of people, as verses that build on human unity rather than division. So instead of competing against other countries for resources and strategic trade routes and national security, these sort of counterbalance that. And it's important because Islam is the second, most populous religion in the world, and there are hundreds of countries where the majority are Muslims. So those nation states sort of give lip service to Islam these days, but there is rooted in the sacred texts this precedent for unity rather than conflict in human relations. So the new imperialism. In order to understand what we mean by new imperialism, I'm going to give you a definition of old imperialism, or what historians call classical imperialism. And that imperialism is state policy, practice, or advocacy of extending power and dominion, especially by direct territorial acquisition or by gaining political and economic control of other areas. That definition I took from Encyclopedia Britannica. The British know more than anybody else what it means to conduct their imperial affairs. So I literally wanted to take it from, Britannica instead of Webster's or Merriam. So this term was originally coined by European powers who didn't like Napoleon. They didn't like what Napoleon did, so they coined what he did imperialism. And since then, it's been in our literature. However, after Napoleon was defeated, and Britain and France and other European powers began their own colonial enterprises, the term went from negative to positive. So the imperial order, was a term that imperial nations used to describe their global hegemony or power. The common myth is that between World War I and World War II, imperialism died out. Why? Because it was replaced by international law. The horrific violence of World War I convinced many leaders to sort of move away from the idea of empires competing with each other and come together on a single table, really long table, where all the countries would work out their differences between each other. And international law was a crucial part of that. It was the heart of that. So it was the League of Nations in the beginning, and then it turned into the United Nations. That's the common view. However, if you study it, and historians have long studied this, imperialism never died out. It didn't die out. What happened was it morphed into something else. So it used international law as a means, as a tool for imperialism. So it's sort of like more civilized form of imperialism. And what brings to mind is the bipolar war between the USSR at the time and the United States. So in the shadow of the Cold War, imperialism still existed. Territories were still expanded. Hegemony was still practiced by those two powers. With the fall of the Soviet Union, empire in literature during that time and a little after again became a negative term. And it became a negative term because what was usually called third world countries or underdeveloped countries, they fought for their rights for independence and freedom from colonial powers. And so that term became negative there. And then it became negative in popular culture in the United States also. So that's just a quick history of the old imperialism. Now, how do we contrast that with the new imperialism? The attacks of September 11 gave certain countries the opportunity to review their national strategic objectives. So instead of following international law, countries, mostly the United States and other powers, like Britain and France and China, what they did was they started to expand their interests in a manner that sort of was clouded in international law lingo, but was really there to exploit former colonies and other countries for the benefit of the homeland. The new imperialism grew out of that. So let me elaborate a little more. I'm just going to read from this paper here. I'm just going to take the United States as an example. The United States has been an imperial power for much of its history and is so today very much. The US went from 13 states to 50. How do you think that happened? Besides the Louisiana Purchase, the rest of it was expansionism and was imperial in nature. Then you have Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, right? How did that happen? And Hawaii, that's so far away from California. How did that happen? Right? Imperialism, that's how it happened. The past and present failure of American leadership to confront its historical and current crimes against humanity regarding Black and indigenous populations in America has allowed for the creation and prosperity of a superiority complex in the minds of many Americans when reflecting upon American society. So this North American sort of imperialism of the United States was termed in, otherness. So where the civilized, they're barbaric, Native Americans, Black Africans as they were being transported here, and the Black community afterwards, even after the Civil War, the language contrasted between those two groups, us and them, and we have the right to dominate these communities, and we have a right to expand. It was called Manifest Destiny. And then later came the Monroe Doctrine, where the United States naval power controlled the Western Hemisphere, basically. The past and present failure of American leadership to confront its historical and current crimes against humanity regarding U.S. foreign policy, so I was talking about domestic policy, now I'm talking about foreign policy, has allowed for the creation and prosperity of another superiority complex in the minds of many Americans on the global front. So in popular culture, you see movies since movies were created, 1920s, 30s, 40s, up until now, where militarily and politically, the United States is always the good guy. It doesn't matter what happens in the world and why the United States military is in the world. Look at how many bases that we have. Look at how many treaties that were coerced. Countries were coerced into signing certain treaties through International Monetary Fund or other means. That is also imperialism. Technically, in political science, that's considered imperialism. But we have a superiority complex about it. The US has initiated 393 military inventions since 1776. 393. With 200 of them being since 1945. This is according to a new book published last year in April 2024 by Monica Duffy Toft, a co-author of Dying by the Sword, The Militarization of U.S. Foreign Policy. She recently wrote an article not too long ago about what Trump is doing now with other territories like Greenland, the Panama Canal, Canada, Mexico, Gaza. So you should check her work out. She's the founder of the Center for Strategic Studies Military Intervention Project. And what she's done is she's collected all this data, all this hard, cold, boring data. And when she tabulated all of it concerning U.S. foreign policy, she gives a grim prediction of what's going to happen to the United States. Hence the title, Dying by the Sword. So this superiority complex that I'm talking about is expressed through xenophobic narratives about other people. And this is not uncommon in the United States among the political establishment. It's just a little bit more brute now. The terminology is a little less gentle now. And so, the clothes are off, the veil is down to see it for what it really is. Now, we're told that America will become a respected leader in the world once again if it embraces a might is right policy towards the rest of the world. This is what we call the new imperialism. It rejects international law outright in the name of America first. Trump recently posted, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." I don't know if anybody remembers when he put that up. That's a quote from Napoleon when he was invading Europe and Egypt and the Middle East. Except he said, "He who saves his fatherland violates no law." That's attributed to him. We don't really know if he said that or not. But Trump doesn't really care. America is embracing brute imperialism unapologetically in the name of making America great again. So here you see the distinction between classical imperialism, or old imperialism, and new. The new imperialism is kind of going back to what the British Empire did, what the what the Dutch did in Africa. But now we have nuclear weapons, and we have all this surveillance technology, and we have drone warfare, and we have AI that's taking over military, is taking over military operations in certain aspects. The examples of the new imperialism are the Trump administration's threats to take over Greenland, seize the Panama Canal, annex Canada, violate the sovereignty of Mexico, which is happening now with drones under the direction of the CIA, and to own and ethnically cleanse Gaza to build a new Riviera, the Riviera of the Middle East, he called it. In terms of international politics, any threat from a sitting US president is considered official policy, and every belligerent policy creates instability and erodes trust and peace. Now, most of those countries that I named, let's begin with Greenland. The leader of Greenland recently said that we're allies of the United States, and they're puzzled by Trump's statement and doubling down on that he wants to buy Greenland, and then saying that military intervention is not off the table. Mexico is an ally of the United States. They share strategic objectives, security objectives, and trade objectives. Panama, the leader of Panama, is an ally of the United States. Denmark is an ally of the United States. Canada is an ally of the United States. So these are allies. And this is the belligerent approach to allies who are not going to forget. Their people are not going to forget. They're not like us. You know, you watch some entertainment, you eat some McDonald's, and you forget what happened 5 years ago. Right? Other people are not like that. First of all, their McDonald's and their fast food is highly limited. And they've taken out fructose corn syrup from their sodas. Even if they had it in there, I'm not sure if they had it in there. They like cane sugar, natural sugar. So they're not going to forget. So can you imagine the Muslim world? Almost 2 billion people, you think they're going to forget? We don't forget. Even when we sleep, we dream about it. In terms of the Middle East, Trump officially supports the Israeli genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and Israeli expansion into Lebanon and Syria, while promoting himself as the president of peace. Remember when he was running the first time, he was going to bring peace to everything? And then when he ran again, he said, no, I'm the peace president. I'm going to cut this, cut that. We don't need to be intervening in all these countries. Let's save that money and spend it on domestic needs. That's what he said. When it comes to Palestine, and this is a very important point that has been brought to my attention for 2 decades since September 11, Islamophobia is central in understanding why genocide and ethnic cleansing is being normalized. Many people have brought the point that if this was happening in Europe, for example, in England, let's say, or France, or Canada, nobody would have stood by and let genocide and ethnic cleansing happen. Nobody would have stood by and let all the hospitals be bombed, all the schools be bombed, all the mosques be bombed, all the nursing homes be bombed. Like, nobody would have stood by and let that happen. But it is happening, and it's okay now. Before, ethnic cleansing was a bad word. Now, it's a humanitarian gesture or a humanitarian statement. When you really care and love a group of people, you ethnically cleanse them because it's good for them. And this is how it's being projected to the rest of the world. Israel justifies its genocide in the same ways imperial powers of the past justified mass murder of Africans and Asians. If you study Britain under the different kings, or even under Winston Churchill, he would order the mass massacre of numerous people from aerial bombardment. And when he would be questioned about it, he'd say, they're barbarians. Why am I being asked about this? This is purely justified. He would openly say that. So we're returning to that. This is now the new imperialism. And it does it by invoking racist views based on supposed superiority of Western civilization. Now, there are a number of journalists I'm going to mention. One of them is Owen Jones. He's a journalist from England. And there are journalists who from Asia, and there are a journalist from this country, North America, Canada, and other countries, and they're making similar points that the Western moral order has broken down because the populace of those countries are helpless in watching their leaders sort of destroy the moral fabric of Western civilization, what the Enlightenment values were supposed to be, are being eroded to such a point where all of this can happen, and then people will still vote in militarists. So what's happening in Europe is shifting from what's called a liberal world order to a right-wing world order. And the right-wing world order is very unstable. And that's what's happening here in North America too. You heard what the U principle was. I say the goal is not world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all for these people. Rather, the goal for these people is American imperialism with conflict, tyranny, and oppression for those who resist. So most of us know what's going on. Most of us empathize with our principles, right? But our leadership has developed in such a way that they can crack down on us in ways like 20 years ago they couldn't have done so. So they're making it very hard for us to mobilize by making mobilizing illegal through different loopholes and new laws based on fear. These new laws are being based on ignorance and fear of people. So again, the otherization of Americans and not the primary victims of American military policy. Now, I promised you that I would give you some sense of hope. Now here it is. I'm a park ranger, so I'm going to use the natural world. Nature never fails us. Nature, there's an order and beauty to nature. When you look on it, get out of the city and look on it, like out of the urban areas with the light pollution and everything else. Look upon nature. Stay awake till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a beauty there in the silence and in the vision of the darkness and the stars and the moon and the different planets going by. There's an order and beauty there. As the sun rises, as the sun sets, there's a beauty and there's an order there. So I'm going to use this example. Think about the darkest night that you've ever had, and you're outside. And if you've never done this, just, imagine it. And you look up. Yeah, you hear crickets, frogs, whatever. But you look up. It's very dark. But the stars are there, they're shining through. When it's not as dark, you can't see the stars. But it's really dark and you're gazing up into the sky. The stars are brightest when it's the darkest. Is that true? Yeah. The moon seems really bright when it's really dark and clear. As Muslims, we don't believe anything is by coincidence. Okay? That is the language of nature speaking to us. So when it's dark, those specks of light, those are your principles. Those are your examples that have gone before you, centuries before you, decades before you. Those of us who stood up in the darkness and shone, really brightly, showed the rest of us, became examples for the rest of us. That's what that is. So the darker it is, for you, the examples are bright. Look upon those examples and follow them. We must unite the deepest part of ourselves with our principles first, and strive to replace myths and deceptions of the new imperialism with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Now, I began with 2 verses of the Quran, and I'm going to end with the following. We call them hadith, sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said to his people, "What actions are most excellent? To gladden the heart of a human being, to feed the hungry, to help the afflicted, to lighten the sorrow of the sorrowful, and to remove the wrongs of the injured." These are very simple things to do. When people think of oppression, they think of overthrowing oppression, and they think of these grand ideas that every individual, if they contribute, we can get this done. We can overthrow evil. But did you know the real means of overthrowing evil are the simple daily actions we do with each other and how we treat ourselves? I promise you, if you gladden the heart of each other, if you feed hungry people, people who are hungry, they don't have any food, and you feed them, and you help people who are afflicted by disease or sorrow or anything, you lighten the sorrow of the sorrowful. You lighten it. You can't eliminate it, what the person's going through, but you lighten it in any means you can. And you remove the wrongs of the injured. You will be building a base for the next generation. You will give birth to those people who will be raised with those common things, and that will be their language. Your language is what you're raised with. How you speak is what you're raised with. That's how we measure it in communities from a sociological point of view. And if they see that among the community, these ordinary easy actions, they're the ones who are going to overthrow evil. It's a long-term objective. So don't become hopeless. Just commit to those actions, and don't forget to be nice and good to yourselves too. Cheat. If you're on a diet, cheat a little bit. It's okay. But be nice to yourselves. And with that, I end, and I hope that brings you some sort of comfort in the 90% sad lecture that I just gave. Thank you very much for listening.
Did we want to open up for questions from anybody? Anybody have anything that they'd like to ask Ghanim? And of course, you can join us afterwards in the parish hall, correct? You can?
Yeah.
Yes, in case anybody wants to ask him or talk to him about some of these thoughts. All right, we'll leave it at that then. So thank you. And our closing hymn. Please join us in singing hymn number 1026, If Every Woman in the World, in your teal hymnal. So please stand if you are able. Hymn 1026.
Every woman in the world had her mind set on freedom. If every woman in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace. If every woman of every nation, young and old and generation, held her breath and of love, there would be no more war. If every man in the world had his mind set on freedom, if every brother stood with brother as a witness for peace, if every man of every nation, young and old, each generation, held his hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked with justice and liberation, hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every nation in the world set a dream for
I invite you to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You can find the affirmation in our order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The closing words, Mindful of Our Highest Aspirations by Rebecca Edmondson Lang. Mindful of our highest aspirations, bound by common faith and purpose, and yet beginning with ourselves as we are, let us take one more step together in our unending quest for dignity, justice, and love. Amen. And so ends our service. So please join us for hospitality.
Okay.
Thank you. Good. I have a request.
Can you hear?
Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes.
hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem was I had the wrong audio set, so I had to switch. Yeah.
Okay. Where's Ghanim?
He's right here. He's just he's talking to Mike.
Oh,
Where,
okay.
there he is. See?
Uh, uh, I was so happy to hear you this morning, and so much of what you said, all 98% of it was accurate and on point, and people really need to hear that and understand what's going on. You know, it's I think everybody can see the apparatus that everyone sees is where we're heading. They just want a better version of what we've already got. A more moral version of what we've already got, and some way of atoning for the past, which you can't really make atonement without passing through the process yourself. You know, it's like you have to come to a complete understanding of it, internally for you, before you can release that and come to grips with what's gone on in the past, or how it's all.
David, your camera's off. Can you?
I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get it up.
So we can see it. I don't know.
Thank you, David.
You can't see you can just see your name. Oh, there you are.
Okay. Anyhow, I really am just, I was thinking this morning at breakfast how, what can we do that makes a difference, and how much time do I have, and how can I go about it without, as soon as as soon as you become effective, you're stomped out of existence. It's that's the reality of things. As long as you're not you can say whatever you want to say sometimes, but even that becomes a danger to this what the hands of power, as it were. This is we don't
Yeah, that's
even
true.
we don't even know these people. Most of these people look like regular folks when you see them without their and on a more equal basis. They are just regular people. But when you ask about something specific that threatens the order of things, it's problematic, seriously. And it represents, if you cause them to upset their personal apple cart, that's even more dangerous. Then you've got to go.
Yeah.
So there's
So we're going to have to let Ghanim go into the coffee hour
oh,
so other
okay, all
people
right.
can talk to him. You're going to have to
Anyhow,
come over. Jump.
oh, I
Go
was going to ask one thing. How's the family?
How's what?
How's his family?
Oh,
How's
they're
the
good.
family?
Yeah, they're very good. Everything's
Okay,
good. Yeah,
all right. That's
we're still here.
And he
well,
looks
that's
good. Yeah, he looks, yeah,
every
strong,
day.
ready to deal with this.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
let him
Well,
go to
thank you
the
so much.
hospitality because there's
All
people who
right.
want to talk to
Again,
him.
thank you so much.
Welcome,
Okay,
David.
thank
Take care.
you.
Be
Good
well.
seeing you again.
You too.
Thank you for being here. It was great. I'm glad you were here. I, are you gonna stick around, or you want to have a little coffee hour? I'm gonna go in and get some coffee, or not coffee, tea, I guess.
T.
Okay,
I'm gonna play the cello.
you're gonna play the cello.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, everyone. I'm
All
so
right.
so glad you were here. All
Okay.
right.
Bye,
Okay,
my
is it
lovely.
okay if I end it? Is it okay?
It'll be okay.
Okay.
All right.
So bye
Ciao.
bye, everybody. Goodbye. Have a good day. Have a good day. All right. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Exit.